Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It's Thursday, September 10th, 2020. I'm Matt Leck on another Matt, Brendan, Jamie, and Matt Binder Thursday. Broadcasting closer to the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal than ever before in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's program, the Throwback Michael interview with Liz Franczak, now known as one of the hosts of the True Anon podcast. This was in March 2019 to discuss her essay in the Baffler, The Century of Spin, and the origins of neoliberal sociopolitical culture. The story of Edward Bernays, who pioneered the field of modern public relations after serving under Woodrow Wilson during World War I, overseeing propaganda initiatives aimed at selling the war to the public and maximizing recruiting efforts. Also on the program, a DHS whistleblower says he was ordered to modify a threat assessment, particularly a section on white supremacy, to make the threat appear less severe and include information on the prominence of left-wing groups. The senior official, and I apologize, this is his full title, the senior official performing the duties of the United States Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, Ken Cuccinelli, said in response, "Not seen to see here." It's not actually what he said, at least not yet. Another 884,000 Americans filed for unemployment for the first time last week, while 13.4 million American workers filed claims for unemployment insurance 2 weeks in a row. Also, Trump acknowledges he intentionally downplayed deadly coronavirus, says it was to reduce panic, and that he's America's cheerleader. Also, a new poll shows the public is deeply skeptical about any coronavirus vaccine approved before the November election. And then finally, this week in Always the People You Least Expect, Amazon.com Inc. charged inflated prices for hand sanitizer, disposable gloves, and other essentials after the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, a consumer watchdog said in a report accusing the world's largest online retailer of price gouging. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Hey, Brendan, how's it going?
Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I can't help but think that maybe America's cheerleader is the best way to approach the office of the presidency.
No, I think that's not how I would do it. And what do I know?
Yeah, I think Biden should come out, dressed as a quarterback and be like, look.
Yeah, he's the quarterback, or he could be like the cool guy with the leather jacket and pull out that Corvette.
Oh, that's again. True. Also, yeah, no, that's Bernie Sanders. Bernie's in the the parking lot with his leather jacket. Be like, football's for losers. We got to talk about class struggle. So yeah, we're gonna get right to the Michael interview today. I think people will recognize his guest. This is Liz Franczak. I'm not sure how much she did prior to this article, but she's a great writer. This article, The Century of Spin and Baffler, is great on Bernays. Bernays, who, after last week's episode, one of his relatives, descendants, was tweeting at me, and I wish I could find the tweet, but he said, "Hey, you should look into, my ancestor Bernays, who started all this lie." And in fact, Michael actually did do that with Liz Franczak here for this interview. So join themajorityreport.com. Keep us sustainable. We are not corporate news. And okay, I'm seeing my computer connection is a little bit weak, so we're going to try to play this from my computer right now.
I can roll it, actually. I have it.
You want to roll it? Okay, cool. All right, so Brendan's going to roll this, and we will see you and Jamie after this.
To the Majority Report, Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Liz Franczak. She's a writer and her recent piece in the Baffler, The Century of Spin, the formative days of public relations, elites imagined a quote-unquote guided democracy. Liz, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Oh, Liz, my bad. Thanks so much for being here. You're here now.
Oh, thank you so much.
So, Liz, can you start by talking about the tale of Atul Gawande and his recent joining of Amazon, but his role as a public intellectual and the sort of branding of conscience or branding of credibility as a way to kind of open up this conversation?
Yeah, so it was very interesting. I when I was doing some research for this piece, I came across a PR story about Atul Gawande, who I had known. He's published several New York Times bestselling books. He's a staff writer at The New Yorker. He's a doctor and a professor at Harvard Medical School, where he's been on Oprah. I mean, he's very, very very popular, as well as a pretty vigorous defender of the Affordable Care Act. And I saw that he had been recently appointed to a new position. I believe that CEO at Amazon's very secretive and I believe still unnamed healthcare venture. Mm-hmm. And it's unclear exactly what Amazon is interested in, but the healthcare marketplace is a huge marketplace, as you could imagine, not just within the insurance market, but also medical devices, hospitals, administration. I mean, the list goes on. It's a massive part of our economy. And so Bezos had recently joined with not just JP Morgan Chase, but also Berkshire Hathaway in this joint venture. And so I found it very interesting that they would appoint not just a Harvard professor, a CEO, of which, it's a bit of an interesting sort of lateral horizontal move, right?
Right.
But also someone who had such a, highly respected and intellectual and quite liberal reputation within the sort of, intellectual discourse, particularly around the role of the government in healthcare, right? Mm-hmm. Regarding debates around the ACA. And so, it's a sort of an interesting move. And, I write in the piece that you kind of call this usually like a public relations coup, right? Because mm-hmm. it's such a hire. But I think it tells us a lot about the ways in which these, new monopolistic and rising monopolistic companies like Amazon sort of position themselves not just as companies that sell goods, but as companies that actually have a rightful place within our democracy.
And then you link this to a great document. I really enjoyed this, Adam Curtis's documentary on the century of the self. Mm-hmm. And when you point out, I like how you say every social media frenemy Kanye West tweeted mm-hmm. out, and this is the tweet. This is actually Kanye. Actually, this is one of his tweets that's more like his old producing, and the fact that it's good, unlike some of his other tweets, which are more like his new records. But that's another conversation. It's 4 hours long, but you'll get the gist in the first 20 minutes. He wrote, basically, Sigmund Freud's nephew, Edward Bernays, capitalized off of his uncle's philosophies and created modern-day consumerism. I think that actually is a pretty good description of at least some of the story Adam Curtis is telling in Century of the Self. First of all, who was Edward Bernays? And, is that actually true? Is the story a lot more complicated than that?
I do think it's true, yes. Yeah. I think that, yes, I love that documentary. I love all of Adam Curtis's films. Highly recommend all his films.
Definitely.
Just a great film essayist. But I do think it's funny that, Kanye in that tweet, which you do point out, I think it is a good tweet, that he focuses on modern-day consumerism. And that was something I kind of wanted to pinpoint. And I do think that the popular narrative around Edward Bernays, who I'll get to in a second, is that, what he was sort of pioneering was a way to sell commercial goods, famously certain tobacco products and Coca-Cola, and that it kind of, spurned this kind of Mad Men style advertising bonanza that shaped a lot of the 20th century. And I think that's true, but I don't think that it's the whole story. And that's kind of what I wanted to do, is sort of shade it a little bit. So, Kanye and Adam Curtis, and also, of course, Noam Chomsky and Stuart Ewan, are completely correct in their positioning of Edward Bernays. He was Freud's nephew, famously, and wanted to sort of, in his mind, popularize Freud for the Americans, in the American popular imagination. But when I was sort of looking into him and looking into sort of what was percolating at the time that Bernays was writing his, treatises on public relations, what I found was that, public relations itself and what Bernays was advocating was really emanating out of what would come to be a much larger ideological project. And, neoliberalism has become such a catch-all phrase for so many things.
Right.
And a lot of people like to dismiss it as, that's either it's not a thing or it's like a slur, which I think is funny, or, all these sorts of hand-waving away. But it was, at the time that Bernays was writing, and there were others as well that were looking at, basically in the interwar years, what they saw as emerging threats to liberal democracy. And that was both the rising threats of social democracy, socialism, communism, and on the other side of that, fascism, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in both of these projects, what they saw was, democratic social planning, state-managed economies had to be, by definition, socially engineered, which meant that they had to supplant, particularly in the social democratic case, free capital markets, and which means personal liberty in their formulation, mm-hmm. right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this was sort of an...
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Yeah. This was like an yeah.
No, you go. You have something. Please finish it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but
no, not at all.
Sort of an emerging sort of theory of thought that was coming about, and what Bernays talks about in his theorizing of public relations, and why I kind of tie it to this larger ideological project, was that the idea was that not just that you could manipulate masses, right? That the masses left unchecked didn't know what they wanted, and that they should be manipulated. So PR, as a technology, as a neoliberal technology, isn't just about, changing people's minds in some sort of magical Freudian psychoanalytic perspective, but actually, teaching people what they want because you know better than they do.
And that's where it's really, because we'll get to Mont Pelerin in a few minutes, but they think this is really important that you brought in the Lippmann work, right? Because Walter Lippmann is, Bernays, I think, because people do probably primarily know who he is through Chomsky or Adam Curtis. And even though we're such a PR saturated society, it's still that actually is kind of a slur. Like, oh, you're a spin doctor, or that's PR or whatever. But Lippmann was a public intellectual, and Lippmann was a serious guy. And he had much more noble ends. However, as you point out, in 1922, Public Opinion, which is his most famous work, was really a precursor to Bernays' own writings on public relations. And it's obviously Lippmann's concerns and orientations are different. They're less kind of commercial and crass. but they reflect that kind of elite preoccupation of, okay, there's going to be a democracy, I guess. Like, we don't want to have a fascist totalitarian society, but we also certainly don't want, like, you know, labor unions to run this country or people to, like, actually be democratized. They need to be guided. And maybe that is where the kind of guided terminology comes from. Is that right?
Yes. So Lippmann is sort of credited with that exact term, guided democracy, which, you know, I point out is quite, and also it seems you were pointing out, is quite paradoxical, right?
Right.
And it's sort of, you know, he was, from my understanding, is that he was initially very critical of the role of propaganda and public relations. But also, like you say, you know, had concerns about, you know, the unwashed masses being responsible for themselves. And this is that sort of elite, this is where that kind of elite managerial technocratic view of liberal democracy comes from. That, again, as you know, Lippmann says, you know, statesmanship consists in giving the people not what they want, but what they will learn to want. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's very instructive to the ways in which these sort of elite technocrats, whilst believing that I don't think it's cynical. I think they really believed that they were committed to a better and just society, but that there is a resentment and a fear that is attached to the threat of social democracy.
And then that leads us maybe more like aggressively to the Mont Pelerin Society, right? So, like, if I'm understanding the threads, we have Walter Lippmann, who is the public intellectual who's, you know, I think probably clearly in your minds and in my mind, super dangerous and wrong-headed, but sincere and concerned and so on. And then Bernays is the, like, hey, I can flip my uncle's stuff about, you know, neurotics in Vienna to sell some cigarettes and make a hell of a lot of money in the new world. Let's do this. And then we get to Mont Pelerin, which really, I mean, it's first of all, maybe explain Mont Pelerin a little bit, because it's so crazy, because I feel like if you're in political media, you actually in some ways spend a lot of time kind of being like, well, you know, of course there's power, and of course power runs things, but, like, you know, don't be Alex Jones about it. It isn't necessarily a smoke-filled room. Mont Pelerin kind of was, like, one of the closer things in history of, like, actually, yeah.
It's like a smoke-filled Swiss Alps resort, you know.
Right. So what was it, and what did they do, and how does it fit into the story?
Yeah, so, well, Mont Pelerin, so that was in 1947, and that was a meeting that came about almost a decade after the initial meeting, which was the colloque Walter Lippmann. That was actually the name of it, in Paris. Mm-hmm. So in 1938, just to continue the thread as you were laying out, so in 1938 you have the meeting in Paris, which inspired by Lippmann's inquiry into the principles of the good society, in which he makes a pretty strong critique of New Deal statism, right? Mm-hmm. And so you've got Lippmann there, and also the classical liberal and libertarian economists and philosophers of the time. So Michael Polanyi, Rupke, Rousseau, von Mises, but also very, very crucially, Friedrich von Hayek. Mm-hmm. And here, this is actually quite literally where the term neoliberalism is coined. Not at Mont Pelerin, but in 1938 in Paris. And it's here where they start discussing how, you know, it's kind of funny when you think about it, but classical liberalism had kind of gone out of fashion during the interwar years, because it was completely and wholly incapable of dealing with, you know, the economic collapse that had faced the country, as well as the World War I, right?
Right.
And so they're trying to refashion a new sort of way of looking at it, or kind of a rebranding, if you want. And then, so here they coined this new term in this new project. And then about a decade later, some of those same people, as well as other bigger names that you might recall, such as Milton Friedman, meet now under the direction of Hayek in Mont Pelerin. And this is where, I mean, it's quite I think it's about 40 or so intellectuals. I mean, it's a huge, huge meeting. And here, you know, this is where Hayek starts really to start formulating a lot of his ideas. And he, you know, I think Corey Robin had a piece recently, I think it was in the Boston Review, that's quite good, about Hayek's singular vision. And the neoliberals were they didn't like the idea of there being a single architect, funny enough. They liked the idea of their ideology being so diffused and so, you know, there's no one single person to point to, that it sort of just had this sort of natural feeling to it as it spread everywhere. But Hayek really is, I mean, his vision is total, I think, in a way that, you know, only a handful of philosophers can maybe make claim to. But so, yeah, go on.
No, go ahead.
No, but just that you're right that Mont Pelerin, you know, is a really singular event, and that what it led to was basically, you know, the idea that, like I said, there wasn't a single architect, but that there would be a generational commitment across the globe to, you know, what would become, you know, the sort of neoliberal attack primarily in economics, but also within academics, political science, education, particularly in the American sense, and also within social democracy in Western Europe.
And also how it would filter in this way that, like, sure, on one hand, you know, neoliberalism's overused, and it's both because some people who are, you know, whatever, they misuse it or they throw it around too much, and then other people like Jonathan Chait want to kind of, you know, be dunces and pretend that it doesn't exist, right? And then there's like, but there is the way in which part of the reason it's used so much is because it is an all-consuming ideology. Like it has been the hegemonic ideology of our time, and it does not only set macroeconomic policy, but even when, you know, as an example, someone like a great theorist like Mark Fisher was like self-critiquing the left, or, you know, in terms of subcultures or political parties even, he could document and show the way that this ideology had seeped in and was creating practices and ideas even in the areas where people thought they were resisting it. So it is really this all-consuming thing. And I think that we're going to get to the unguided plutocracy in a minute, but I want to put it in relation to Quinn Slobodian's book, where, and I'm forgetting the name of it, unfortunately, but Matt was
Globalist?
Global. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So it's like, and what, yeah, totally. Thank you. So he basically documents that first, that yes, these people that you've been talking about did have a global project, and the problem with it in the popular discourse, though, is that it wasn't the effort. It wasn't like, oh, we're the guys who are responding to social democracy and Keynesianism and so on, or even communism, by saying, you know, let the market be free, let's deregulate, let's be less bureaucratic. That even people who've critiqued them have ceded that ground to them. And actually, that's totally wrong. Their project was tremendously bureaucratic and tremendously governmental. It just was in a way that favored the interests, frankly, of the wealthy and landowners and corporate interests versus the sort of beginning steps of social democracy, of democratic mechanisms favoring like workers, as an example. And I feel like what your piece is doing is not only showing that, but also showing the cultural dimension of it, which is getting this like broad-based buy-in to an ideology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that a right way to think of it?
I think Wendy Brown, the political theorist, she's done some great work sort of explicating how neoliberalism isn't just an economic theory, like you say, or isn't just its domain. It's not just limited to those domains. That actually, it was sort of a larger rationality, right? When we say ideology or rationality, but that also demanded kind of a new conception of the self, right? And this is where it gets very dangerous. And you see it where she talks about, that it neoliberalism economizes every aspect of our life. So you have, instead of thinking of the self as human, as a self, as a being, we start to conceive of ourselves as human capital, things to be, and choices that we make in our life as ways in which to either, appreciate or depreciate our social value, right? And you see this as markets start popping up even in non-economic spheres. Within dating is a perfect example. Social media is a perfect example, and all of these ways we start to, this also has the intended and cascading effect of them further breaking down social bonds. Because no longer are we people with social ties, but we are just bits of human capital in competition with other bits of human capital, right? And so that also then further entrenches the idea that all of these markets and the way that the sort of world is being governed is completely natural and rational. Because when you start to think of yourself as that way, then of course that is how the world is, right? And so it's quite dizzying, and I think there's a good reason why, I think there's a lot of reasons why Jonathan Chait says that neoliberalism isn't a thing. I won't get into the non-generous reasons why I think he says that.
By the way, you can, if you want, you could take a few cracks. We're not above that here. But maybe you are, so no problem.
No. I think why would you admit to being the thing that everyone hates? You know what I mean?
Right. But, okay, I buy that. That's not even that ungenerous. That's just true.
No, it isn't.
Yeah.
It isn't.
Yeah.
No, but I do think that, there's a reason why it's very difficult to kind of point to and figure out just how we got here and who is responsible. And I don't think that that's unintentional. But I do think in America it is unique. I will say that I do think in Europe, they at least have a bit more of a vocabulary and a history within their popular discourse and their popular punditry for what we call neoliberalism. And, in America, we really don't. And I do think, you bring up Jonathan Chait, although there's plenty more people to name, when you have a media class and a, public intellectual class that not only, was schooled in and went through the ranks of this very system, right? Because this revolution really starts to take place in the 70s, late 60s, early 70s. At least within the global north, either they still believe this is just the way things are, that nothing can, this is the end of history. There is, we have post-politics. This is just how everything is naturally. Right. Or they have a vested interest in maintaining this, right? Because it maintains their position. So you've got kind of both things happening, as I think you mentioned, and as also, that book Globalists really lays out clearly.
Totally. And then it's interesting because I do think of like a great essay like Exiting the Vampire Castle, where it's sort of like first first these markets can get replicated in subcultures that actually undermine solidarity and broader efforts. And of course, there's all sorts of complications there, but it is like a real factor that Fisher identified. And then also these mainstream, this is like the kind of like pseudo woke politics where it's like, okay, maybe we can absorb, and it is particularly people, well, actually, Chait, to his credit, has not upgraded his racial understanding of this country at all. So in a way, he's maintained like a weird consistency, including in like not pretending to be woke. But, like there are, you definitely, I mean, David Brooks, I mean, he wasn't known for like particularly inflammatory writing, but this guy literally came up through like the Weekly Standard ranks. This is not someone with any type of, documented sophistication or nuance about race at all. Well, now all of a sudden he sports reparations. And on one hand, it's like, okay, that's a great cultural step that a conservative in the New York Times would grapple with that. But then it's also like, oh, there should be psychic restitution, not material ones. Okay, I see how this works. You can definitely still operate in your same logic, even as you upgrade the context around it. And that's how pernicious it is.
Yes, definitely.
What is unguided plutocracy in the last couple of minutes?
Good question. So what's been interesting is that now that we've kind of laid all of this out, our society does not look like anything that the neoliberals actually envisaged, right? Because they didn't want chaos, and they didn't want, they certainly didn't want Donald Trump to be president. The vision for sort of lean, lean states that secured private liberty whilst maintaining, calm global markets, that is not what our actually existing society looks like, right? Quite the opposite, as we've got not just what's happening in America, but also, the rise of the far right all throughout Western, Central, and Eastern Europe, as well as in Central America with Bolsonaro. And so, after the 2008 crisis, and I do think, especially with the failures of the Obama administration to address that crisis in any meaningful way, the sort of technocratic elites have lost all legitimacy, right? And this is where we see this sort of chaos and this populist rage percolating and brewing throughout the world. But what's been interesting is that sort of on the flip side of that, the flip side of the right, is that we have this sort of rise of the return of this sort of liberal, not necessarily technocratic, but definitely bourgeois liberal, clustered around sort of democratic urban party power. And they have run not into democracy, not trying to envisage a new society or a better society, but into the arms of the companies like Amazon and Google and Facebook. And as these companies continue to and this is where I sort of tie it to Mr. Gawande, or Dr. Gawande, in that, the corporations play into the hands of this. If we've got Donald Trump in the White House, and, dismantling the American regulatory system and finishing off in a lot of ways a lot of what the neoliberal project initially was in terms of complete and total privatization. Then you've got, on the flip side, liberals running into new emerging governance structures from privatized companies.
That's that unbelievably stupid and horrible SNL sketch. And I say this like every other friggin', of course I don't like SNL. I almost wish I could say I like SNL to play against type, to be honest with you. But there was that sketch that really did stand out with Steve Carell, where the whole premise is here's Jeff Bezos trolling Donald Trump, and we're laughing with Jeff Bezos at Donald Trump. And it's incredible, the shrinkage. Like, there's no, again, don't write the sketches for the politics, but the ideology of that show, just distilling that, like, there isn't a movement in this country that's saying, Amazon is a fundamental threat to supply chains, democracy. People are trying to kill themselves all over the country at these warehouses. And Donald Trump is a totalitarian racist, fulfilling, all of these. So maybe comedy or rebelliousness just in general maybe should object to both of those. But the whole sketch is just like, Amazon is cool. I watch cool shows on Amazon Prime. Donald Trump's a jerk. But Jeff Bezos is going to win because he's smarter. That really is the distillation of the whole corruption and failure you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think, so much of it comes down to Donald Trump is so personally disgusting, or, it's just aesthetics that they find so disgusting because, Donald Trump dismantling the state and allowing corporations to rise. These are not things in disagreement with each other, right? Like, these are not two ideological forces battling it out. Like, it's quite the same project, actually. And so it's really dangerous, I think, and really needs to be pushed back on this idea that there are good corporate overlords or that these CEOs have anything to do with our best interest. It's horrifying, actually. And I think, Amazon is a good example, but also Facebook.
Totally.
It was recently, I don't know if you saw recently, they just announced this like pivot to private. Have you seen this?
And the criminal probe that's opening against them around their data practices. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, this pivot to private. A lot of people I saw really applauding it. And, Zuckerberg is learning and he's responding not just to consumers, but citizens and their concerns about democracy and whatever, right?
How naive can people be? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's not just naive. Yeah. I think, you really have to take a step back, and look at what are these structures of production actually? Right. Mm-hmm. And I think what you see is, first of all, private does not mean privacy. Right. So what does private mean? Okay, well, Facebook's entire structure is around extracting data, right, and hoarding data. So private interactions, if you're having more private interactions, then you're possibly having more meaningful interactions, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're having more meaningful interactions, then Facebook is able to extract more meaningful data. Right. And so this isn't a move or a pivot away from their initial, business practice. It's really, they're not, it's an intensifying of their data extraction. And yet it's being billed or it's being sold to us as a civic good, as a virtuous move that they're doing, but it's not. And so this has the sort of, again, cascading effect of, further disorienting us, not just as consumers, but as citizens, but then also regulators and politicians, right?
Right.
So it's quite dangerous. We have to really take a step back and try as much as we can to escape, or at least push back on some of the ideological framework that we exist in somehow, to take a more critical look at these systems of exploitation and production, so we can really understand what is at stake and what is going on here.
I don't want to be presumptuous, Liz, but we only have a minute left. It sounds like you're pretty stoked for Beto to run for president.
Oh, man, yeah. Love him.
I think he's hitting exactly the themes that you're writing and talking about here. The piece is excellent. It's Century of Spin. The Baffler, we have links to it. And actually, I hope we can definitely talk more. I think this stuff is incredibly important. and you do a great job laying it out. Liz Franczak, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, folks. Hope you enjoyed that interview. A great one. Check out Liz over at TrueAnon, which has been, I think, I'll speak for myself, one of my favorite podcasts over the past couple of months, a year, I guess.
Them coming on the scene last summer was excellent. And I will say, this will be a rare moment where I toot my own horn. I believe us booking her for a Majority Report was the first time she had been on any of these lefty podcasts, progressive podcasts.
She's very astute too. I mean, she's a good find, because that last point about Facebook going private, I think you look at it in the context of it as the right-wing propaganda machine with like groups and how like the QAnon component of all this. I mean, very good, very wise to make us, I guess, suspicious of Zuckerberg at that moment, because I think she pretty much called it. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Hey, guys, how you doing? Do you hear me?
Yep, hear you perfectly.
Perfect. I'm here on the show, and I'm ready to defend Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah,
let's do this.
The Pelosi defender has logged on.
That's right. Oh, perfect. That was perfect timing there, Jamie.
Thank you.
The Pelosi defender is logged on. That is actually what I originally titled that video when I clipped it. I'm not sure what the title got changed to, but yeah, that's.
It was something like Matt. It's something like Matt Binder defends Nancy Pelosi's honor from the Majority Report crew or something like that.
You're never going to live that one down.
I hope that didn't mess up your weekend too much.
No, it was great. I got a bunch of people sending me gifts from medieval shows of someone like riding a knight's riding horses, going, "There's Matt going to defend his queen, Nancy Pelosi." Yeah, I'll take it. I'll take it.
That's right.
Actually, the most disturbing image was Lizard Rumsfeld over on Twitter photoshopped my face on top of Marcos from Daily Kos's face when he's meeting with Nancy Pelosi to hand her
the roses.
That was easily the most disturbing. Everything else funny. That one made me question whether I want to go full throttle with this.
Yeah, Lizard Rumsfeld's the best. I need to find that, actually.
Yeah.
Solid memes.
Oh, I found it. Here it is. One moment.
Are you going to put it up on?
Yeah, here it is.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
He found a really bad picture of me, too. It's amazing.
Wow. There he is, simping for the queen.
Before we go
to that's not me, because if it was me, there'd be way more roses. I would have sent way more. Mm-hmm. Wasn't enough.
Man, Marcos really did that. Well, okay. Well, before
the funny thing is that the 7,000 roses in that photo are only the ones he personally delivered. There was something like 10,000 more that came.
Nice.
To do that, and then to have her just completely like sit on her hands the entire time they have the house back is just delicious. Uh-huh. Maybe we'll get those tax returns one of these days, folks.
Maybe November 4th.
Yeah. Maybe if I like daffodils. That's what Pelosi. Maybe if it was the wrong choice, Marcos. You effed it up.
Right.
Before we go to the fun half, do one of you guys want to set up this sheriff's department story? There's a sheriff that's mad online.
Yeah, Jamie was very excited about this one. You should take this.
Oh, he is so mad. Okay. So, a little background first. The Huffington Post's Christopher Mathias recently published a story about an arrest carried out by some uniformed thugs in Spokane, Washington. As we have been hearing out of the Pacific Northwest and elsewhere, they did not have on any clear markings. They refused to identify who they worked for when they were carrying out this arrest. And it seemed rather politically motivated because the guy who got arrested was Jeremy Logan, co-chair of the Spokane DSA, who was on his way to a protest. And they picked him up on a many years old warrant from a different county. Now, this is not new, I should say. Some people quite near and dear to me had their house raided around the time of Occupy Wall Street on May Day and got hassled and arrested on old open container warrants. They rifled through their stuff, tried to find out what activism they were associated with, et cetera, et cetera. Nevertheless, concerning that this is going on, right? So,
right.
So to compound this, this butt hurt, right? So I should say there's can we put up the quotes from the story? Because when asked for comment, when reached for comment, or no, they did not actually give this comment to Huffington Post, but the cops are quoted in the story expressing their chagrin that somebody would be reporting on these kinds of activities. And they said, quote, next one. Yes, in a separate statement, the sheriff, Ozzy Knezovich, lashed out at the Huffington Post for writing the story, saying, quote, I know it is difficult for the Huffington Post to understand the rule of law. They seem to have forgotten we are a country of laws. They've also forgotten their duty to our country to provide unbiased, factual reporting per the protections provided by the Constitution of the United States. Boo effing who? Are you guys enjoying these fascist tears yet? Well, the story gets even better. Okay, so a guy named Chris Caesar, who is a bit of a prankster. We used to work together at Death and Taxes, actually, which was a very silly website blog once upon a time, wrote an email to the sheriff of Spokane saying, Sir, I have some important intelligence to share about Antifa that I wanted to share with law enforcement. They fucking rock. Thank you, sir. Chris Caesar. So, just like a pretty innocent prank. And then there's more. Another email asking him, are you free for a call? So I guess
this is from the sheriff.
So I guess they didn't really get the part where he said they effing rock. I don't know. Or maybe they just wanted to get him on the phone so they could trace him. And Chris said, LOL, no, I have a real job, unfortunately. He also appended a SpongeBob meme. Oh, yeah. Well, okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yep, don't get to the SpongeBob yet.
Sheriff said, well, you proved one point. True journalism is truly done. And then he said, oh, and thanks for the great optic / talking for my podcast / radio show and press conference. Okay, count your own.
I got to say, I sort of respect the sheriff now because, as all good podcasters do, always mining the real world for content. So this sheriff has a podcast, apparently.
Yeah, I was going to say when I first looked at these, I thought it was Chris that saying it was for his podcast, but no, because I thought he's the one who has a podcast. Let's cite Chris's podcast. This is Awful Pod. But yeah, so this apparently the sheriff is in the podcast business is a competitor. So
well, pod. I mean, you got to fight podcasts with podcasts, and as we all know, it is top podcasts are a major recruitment and radicalization tool of Antifa. So I guess it makes sense.
This sheriff apparently, when that Huffington Post piece came out, he held like a 45-minute press conference or something like that. So I mean, this is clearly someone who likes to hear them.
He's a media guy.
We'll get into that. So the pièce de résistance in this is the SpongeBob meme that Chris Caesar has attached to his email. Because, the sheriff said he was going to have a press conference, and Chris Caesar said, well, here's a live picture of that press conference, and it is a meme where the character SpongeBob is depicted with the words, well, you proved one point. True journalism is truly done in the, the letters, the change capitalization.
Uppercase, lowercase,
which is designed to depict idiocy.
Can anyone throw in a SpongeBob chuckle so we could put a period on this one?
Well, actually, no. There's
so much more. So now he's mad, right? He's mad. He's owned. He's not owned. He's laughing. Okay. And he has a 45-minute long press conference about this article wherein he uses as examples of media bias these prank emails he received from Chris Caesar including the SpongeBob meme. So what does that say about our law enforcement, that they can be driven practically to tears by a few innocent emails and a meme of a cartoon character from a show made for children and adult stoners?
All right. Also, this guy doesn't look like your typical podcaster.
This is another from individual. And Daniel, I'm going to give you the entire slide deck so you don't have to worry about it. This individual, Chris Caesar, says that he's worked in for the Washington Post, Boston Globe, a few others.
Says his work has appeared in those places. Different distinction, but
sent me this saying, "Hey, have some intelligence to share about Antifa. They effing rock." You tell me that the media isn't biased towards Antifa or in favor of. These are journalists, folks. So I said, "Hey, you free for a call?" And he laughs and says, "No, I have a real job." Not the first time I've heard that slam. Job becomes really real when you have a baby die in your arms.
Oh, God.
Yes, people don't remember or realize what your law enforcement does for you.
They kill babies, yes.
Nice optic. They sent me that. These are journalism. These are journalists.
These are journalists.
National, Washington Post type.
Yeah, Washington Post type. Wonder what that type is.
I mean, yeah, we should just say Chris Caesar is a podcaster. The This Awful Podcast. Not a
Washington Post journalist.
I can't wait for law enforcement to start going after podcasters directly as enemy number one of the people.
Well, it's funny that they think before going to just rounding us up, they're going to try to compete with us on the battlefield of ideas by launching their own podcast.
Yeah, bring it on, bitches.
Yeah,
we're ready.
Oh my gosh! I guess we need to listen to the sheriff's podcast.
I think we do.
Yeah. I've given myself some homework, but I'm going to do that over the weekend.
If it's as hilarious as that little bit he just did, I am signing up on Patreon.
Wonder if they do cold opens.
Oh my God, I would love to see that.
You think they work on the bits? I mean, do you think they're talking about it? And then you'll come in with a real funny impression. And oh boy.
So
all right,
good.
folks. Well, we should probably plug some stuff. I'll begin. On TMBS this week, we had Milton Alamati join us, talk about the pointless coup in Mali, what makes a pointless coup. We also talked about in Uganda, Yoweri Museveni is challenging his political opponent, who is a musician in Uganda, Bobby Wine, he's running a birther sort of play on him, saying he's actually 40 when he's saying he's 38. So see how that goes. But Milton talked to us about that. And then on Literary Hangover, I'm playing Flight Simulator 2020, flew around Bismarck, Mandan, did a little hometown tour for folks. So yeah, twitch.tv/Literary Hangover there. Matt.
All right. I guess I'll go, right? So yeah, tonight on the show, youtube.com/Matt Binder at 9:30, and also later after the program on doomedpod.com as an audio podcast, I will be talking to Jess Skarain, who is the last progressive challenger in the last progressive primaries of 2020. Yes, that's right. This year is thankfully slowly coming to an end. And even though we're in September, Delaware hasn't had their primary yet. So that's Tuesday. But tonight I'm talking to Jess Skarain, who's running for U.S. Senate. Interestingly enough, she's running against Chris Coons in what is Joe Biden's old Senate seat. So that would be a little cherry on top of the whole situation. Maybe something like progressive get the last laugh if she wins this one. Also, a new edition of my newsletter, missinfo.com, like misinformation, short for misinformation, went out this morning, where I look into the conspiracy theories that have been going around for the past day or two, where people on the right believe that the wildfires that have been really decimating the entire West Coast have been obviously started by, you guessed it, Antifa. Yes, it's as ridiculous as it sounds. So misinfo.com for the newsletter, youtube.com/MattBinder, and doomedpod.com for the show tonight and the podcast.
All right. I will go now. So this week on the Antifada, Andy and Sean spoke with the great Brace Belden of the True Anon podcast about a little bit of labor history. They talk about how communist organizers like Harry Bridges, leader of the International Longshore and Warehouse Union, exercised worker power in the past and how we can fight to bring it back today. And they end with a call to build the party, which is something that's been on a lot of people's minds. What's a party? What should it do? How do we make it happen? They talk a lot about that. And later in the week, we're going to release a bonus wherein Brace and the guys talk all about punk rock because they are all aging punk rockers. Also, last Friday, I have not plugged this yet on this show. Andy's side project, Talkin' Tina, which is his project on Latin American politics, came out. And in this one, he discusses the coup in Bolivia through the lens of Marx's 18th Brumaire with Jose Lastra Soria. So that is, I haven't listened to it yet, but it sounds super interesting. Everyone should check that out. Patreon.com/theintifada. Also, today, right after Majority Report is over, I'm going on the Nomi Key show to talk about socialist feminism. So I hope everybody tunes in for that.
A little bit disappointed I wasn't invited to be on the aging punk rocker show.
Well, we'll have to do another one for you because I wasn't invited either.
Oh, so I guess we'll just do our own then, Jamie.
Yeah, we'll do our own side project about what it means to be an aging punk rocker. Yeah,
I mean, that definitely is a thing. There's certainly a big enough audience out there, like old punk rockers and punk rock parents, and that's something that we should do.
Mm-hmm. Hell yeah, I'll have my people talk to your people.
Oh, let's do it. But first, it's time for the fun half. Let's go.
You are in for it. All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Dannerky.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break for people.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are...
Psych. Fuck them.
Almost says what? Almost says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black. African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
All right, we're back. It's the fun half. What's up, everyone? I have the phone lines and IM machine running. So feel free to call in and send in your instant messages like it's the year 1999. Jamie, I believe you have you're expecting a call later, so I'll have my my eyes peeled for that.
I think that we would like to hear from these folks.
Yes, for sure. Ooh, the ominous these folks. You'll have to wait and see who these folks are, folks.
It's a surprise.
What story do you guys want to get to first?
Well, I selected or I set up this last one, so perhaps it's up to you this time.
All right, so let's talk about. Actually, let me talk about this. It's not on the sheet, but I put it out. I just put it out this morning. So let me discuss this because it's on the top of my mind, and it's breaking. As you all know, the wildfires. There's been wildfires that have been raging across the west coast of the United States and Canada too. So really North America, and these wildfires are started in California and Oregon and Washington. Numerous reasons for these wildfires to start. It's the wildfire season. Unfortunately, we have a season for wildfires in which it's so hot in this it's so hot in the world, and this area on the these areas on the West Coast experience immense drought during this time of year. And all it takes is really the slightest spark to create what becomes an out of control raging wildfire that can take out tens of thousands of acres of land, decimating people's homes and towns. And, some of the things that we now know have been started by these wildfires have been, down trees, taking down power lines. That started one of the wildfires in Oregon, I believe. A wildfire in California was started after a gender reveal party gone wrong. As insane as that sounds, yes, someone had a gender reveal party and decided it would be a good idea to tell the world if their baby was a boy or a girl via some sort of explosive device showing a blue or pink coloring. And that set a fire.
A tradition as old as time.
Right, yes.
Abolish the gender binary, folks.
Right. So there's many reasons. And of course, this is all perpetuated by climate change. And 2020 is especially bad. I don't know if you guys remember this, but just a few days ago, Los Angeles County in California recorded the highest temperature ever recorded at 121 degrees. So, I mean, that's insane. So you would understand how if a small spark is lit, that can easily get out of control and turn into a wildfire that devastates people, places, animals, and land. But for the right, they don't believe in any of those things. They think that if a wildfire starts, there has to be some sort of devious plot that purposefully is trying to, I don't even know what the mindset behind that is, but they got to blame someone. And of course, they're going to blame this year Antifa, their enemy number one. So I don't know really where this sort of started, because it's hard to kind of tell. Because these social media companies like Facebook and Twitter, they are not to give them credit, but they are a bit more proactive about taking some stuff down. So a lot of the originating posts on Facebook have been removed. But if you look online on just a quick Facebook search, it's not hard to find. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of people talking about, I heard from a friend of a friend, or a cousin told me, or, I heard while listening to the police scanner, even though I actually didn't hear, someone else told me when you confront them about this. So there's no proof of it, but the conspiracy is this. Basically, Antifa started the wildfires, and they know because apparently they heard from someone that 7 Antifa members have been arrested for starting these wildfires, and they're being charged with arson. Only if you look into this isn't true. There's been no Antifa arrests. In fact, one of the local police departments in Oregon have come out and specifically said that they have arrested no one in Antifa or otherwise. They even threw Proud Boys in there, even though I haven't seen any speculation that Proud Boys were behind these fires. They also claimed that not only that, but they're not even looking into any sort of Antifa involvement in these wildfires, because honestly, you'd be insane to do so when these wildfires have been raging for some time now. I mean, years. Again, we have a wildfire season. So this thing spreads though, and I basically am able to I've been able to trace it back to 2 sort of main official sources. Again, these aren't the originating ones, but these are what's being passed as the 2 original sources. Because other than these 2, you have people sharing old links about people being arrested for arson, which don't even mention Antifa. And again, they're old links. They're not even involved with these wildfires. I don't know why these people are spreading these links as proof. But the 2 main sources are this one local website. Let me pull up the name here. It is called the Roseburg Beacon, and it presents itself as basically just this Oregon local independent weekly news outlet. And they put out a print weekly, and that's just what they are, the Roseburg Beacon. But if you look a little bit further, you find out that the guy who runs this very small, I believe it's only him, paper, is a man by the name of David Jacques, who's a local Oregon real estate agent and also a purveyor of right-wing propaganda. This guy's Facebook page is littered with, anti-Antifa postings, anti-mask wearing postings, COVID, coronavirus skepticism, anything. The 2020 right-wing starter pack is on this guy's Facebook page. And he runs this Roseburg Beacon, and he's claiming that Antifa members were arrested for arson in Medford, Oregon, and that there's more unconfirmed arrests. And the funny thing is, his own paper, which he uses as his source, doesn't even say this, because I guess he realizes he's writing in an official print. Maybe he should be a little bit more careful. It only heavily speculates Antifa involvement. Is this another tactic of Antifa? At this time, there is no direct evidence to suggest this, even though in my own Facebook post, I'll say that Antifa members have been arrested. Okay, but moving on. The other source that seems to be the other only official source claiming this is Russia Today. They have an article out there with the headline, Antifa are thrilled to hear this. Portland police ask protesters not to start blazes amid statewide wildfire emergency. Now, if you read the headline, to me, it sounds like a heavy insinuation, especially when you're dealing with a lot of people who don't have very good reading comprehension and can't read into the lines and how certain things are worded to say certain things without actually saying them. It reads to me like an official is saying that Antifa is supporting the wildfires. And of course, this is how this conspiracy helps spread. But if you look into this, the actual article, it only says that the Portland police asked protesters, and it includes in an embed to the tweet, we ask you to demonstrate peacefully and without the use of fire. That's all they said. They said to the Portland protesters, do your thing, but don't use fire tonight, please. But where does this Antifa are thrilled to hear this line come from? Well, that's because Russia Today is also quoting a very reliable source, Mr. Andy No from, the right-wing provocateur, who is basically behind every sort of cover for white supremacists on the West Coast.
Surprise.
Right. So, Russia Today basically merged what he was saying with any sort of official, wildfire / Antifa connection from an actual source. And, that's where they came up with this. is. So no, just because you heard something on, from a friend of a friend on Facebook, or there was one specific, I got to read this one for you guys. This one's really funny. So here's an example of those like heard it through the grapevine posts that are spreading on Facebook. So my brother is a logger, as you all know, and one of the guys he works with owns about 50 acres between Welch's and Standard. Last night, he saw somebody trying to start a fire on his property. He went down to the property and discovered a group of Antifa throwing Molotov cocktails on his property. He had a fire truck on his property and immediately went down with his guys and tried to put out the fire. He also took his ARs, and they exchanged over 200 rounds of fire with these people. They called 911 and said they were trying to light their property on fire, and the police told them they were on their own. So this story is really every sort of, right-wing masturbatory, like made up, the police won't come to help you, Antifa throwing Molotovs, having to go down and exchange gunfire with these agitators. Like really, it's the perfect, it's an action film, really. It sounds like if the director of Taken also directed a movie about the Portland protests, really. So this is the sort of stuff that's spreading out there and people are believing it. None of it's true. Wildfires start for many reasons, all related to climate change. And usually people being stupid, like having gender reveal with explosives, and not because protesters are going into the woods and setting forest fires.
That is a funny image, though, don't you think? Some chud out there calling, hello, 911. I'm being menaced by Antifa terrorists. And the police are like, we are Antifa terrorists. Boom.
All right. You're on your own, kid.
They like pull off their face to reveal just a balaclava mask underneath. Like, we've been Antifa the whole time. No.
Right. It's, you know what? You know what it reminds me of, actually? That line from The Watchmen that weird libertarians always like to quote online. It's like, and the whores and the politicians will look up and shout, "Save us!" And I'll look down and whisper, "No." It's like they're on they really do love Rorschach, don't they? I mean, it's unbelievable. But yeah, that's what it reminds me of. Incredible. Just incredible. The bullshit people believe. Also, even if you were listening to the police scanners and heard someone saying like, "Oh, we got to call in about some protesters with Antifa," it just goes to show you that that's why regular, normal people shouldn't listen to police scanners, because police scanners aren't official anything. Police scanners are literally, you're hearing what's being called into the police from just any old Dick and Jane who are saying anything, and they go to then investigate it. So any asshole could call up the police and say, "Yeah, there's Antifa protesters." And then you'll hear over the police scanner, "Oh, yeah, just got this call, going to check in on possible Antifa protesters." And they'll go and find out it's an old man in a hoodie pushing a shopping cart or something. And then that's what your Antifa protesters will be. But of course, you won't find out that version of it because there was nothing there. And that's how these sort of rumors based on police scanner run wild too.
Indeed.
All right. You guys want to take some calls? Let's take some calls.
Yeah, let's do it. I think we have a friend of the show calling in at a 646, if you see him.
1 second. Let me scroll down here. All right. I see. Here we go. 646. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Are they speaking, Matt? I don't think we hear them.
I can't hear them.
Oh, wait. Hold on. Sorry. I'm sorry, caller. 1 second. We're having an issue with the phone lines again. 1 second. Let me see. All right. I'm going to need to hang up on you, caller. Can you call right back in like a minute? I need to just make sure this works.
Okay.
Wait, hold on.
There
this
we go.
Might work. Oh, hello, caller?
Yep.
Hello?
646,
Hi.
you there?
Hello?
Yes, we hear them.
Hello?
Hello.
Okay.
You hear them, but I don't. Okay, well, it's all right.
Jamie, do you want to conduct the call then, maybe?
What?
You can hear the caller, right?
Yeah.
Okay. You know this caller?
Yeah. I was hoping to get them on the line to talk about the grad student strike at the University of Michigan.
Yes, that's what I'm here to talk about.
All right, I can hear you. Can you hear the Matt or no?
No, but it's okay. Go do this call and then I'll figure it out after. I don't want to lose this call.
Okay.
All right.
So as I said, should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
My name's Amir. I'm secretary of GEO 3550, local AFT, American Federation of Teachers. We're graduate student workers at the University of Michigan, and we've been on strike since Tuesday, fighting for a safe and just campus reopening, including both demands related to the pandemic and abolitionist demands calling for defunding the campus COP and the university breaking ties with law enforcement. So this is a really important movement. We're picking up steam. Other bodies on campus are starting to strike as well. The residents advisors, the RAs in the dorm, are holding a wildcat strike. The UM dining workers are organizing for action. Next week, the faculty senate are going to vote on whether they are going to hold a vote of no confidence in the president of the university. So it's an exciting moment. And I think there's a lot going on. There's potential here to, connect the broader labor movement with these incredibly important issues of anti-policing. In addition to, the basic safety needs that we have on this campus in regard to the pandemic.
Hell yeah. Can you tell me more specifically what some of your demands are, referring to both safety in terms of COVID and safety in terms of getting the cops off campus?
Yeah, absolutely. So the university opened without a robust testing plan. Right now, they are not doing randomized testing of asymptomatic individuals. The majority of medical experts, including the university's own experts, have said that it is not safe to reopen without this randomized asymptomatic testing, yet they're not doing it. I'd also add that Vanderbilt College, which is like a quarter of the size of the University of Michigan, in the past week has done 10 times as many tests as the University of Michigan. So what the safety protocols that they've put into place are totally inadequate. We're also calling for additional support for international students and for parents. We're asking for funded degree timeline extension for all graduate students, many of whose research has been seriously delayed by the pandemic over the summer. And as I mentioned, we're calling for a 50% reduction of budget for the campus cops and breaking ties with the Ann Arbor Police Department and ICE. I'll quickly also add that we see these pandemic demands and anti-policing demands as inseparable. The university has made the connection really clear because in this moment where there are national uprisings against police racism and violence all over this country, rather than cutting ties with law enforcement as comparable institutions like the University of Minnesota have done, the University of Michigan is actually expanding cooperation with law enforcement in a perverse attempt to enforce social distancing in the community. Additionally, everybody's aware that both the pandemic and racist policing disproportionately affect the most vulnerable among us, especially people of color.
Word. I also understand from a friend of the show, David Dayan's reporting at the American Prospect, that this is the first big university strike action of the COVID era. So congrats on that. Is there anything that people can do to get involved and support you guys in what you're doing?
Yeah, if people want to donate to our strike fund, they can go to our website, geo3550.org, and click on the support link. We'd be happy if anybody wanted to tweet at the University of Michigan Regents. I'll just note that the university board, the regents in the state of Michigan, are elected. 7 out of 8 of them are Democrats, and they're still putting up with this bullshit. So contact those people, especially if you're in the state of Michigan, and tell them you will not vote for the two that are up for re-election in November. Our goal is to make everybody know just how incompetent this administration is. So tweeting at the university president, Mark Schlissel, tweeting at the regents would be a huge amount of help. If you're in another labor union and you can put out a statement of solidarity for us, we would appreciate it immensely. We have been getting statements of support from other unions from coast to coast. It's really incredible to see.
Hell yeah, that's so good. And that kind of solidarity is so important. And I think it's also important that this kind of social justice unionism, as opposed to narrow business unionism, is making a return, a comeback, right? Like you're not just focused on the narrow interests of the union's members, but on creating a more just and equal world for everybody. And I think that is so important.
Thank you. Yeah, we feel exactly the same way.
Well, thank you so much for the call. And I have so much solidarity for you guys, as I'm sure everybody here does. And good luck with what you're doing, because it is very important.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
All right. We appreciate you too. And have a good rest of the day.
Binder, did we lose your... Oh, there you go. Matt,
I'm here.
Oh,
I'm here.
Matt,
I'm here.
Man,
yep. I thought I'd jump off because I couldn't hear the call. Why don't you guys hit another story, and while you do that, I'll continue figuring this out so we can take more calls.
I'm sorry you missed that, Matt. They just roasted you so savagely.
Yeah,
Ooh,
they said.
I'm sure.
They said one thing that would be helpful from their standpoint is if people would stop defending Nancy Pelosi so much. So
right, I'll try to do better for them.
That is important. I mean, the crunch is coming for higher education, and the solidarity needs to come faster than that crunch does. Because I mean, this starts in Michigan, but I mean, it's going to be rough. I think the next few years because of what coronavirus is going to do to budgets. So
yeah, for sure. So you want us to do another story while you figure your stuff out?
Give me a second here to figure this out. Yeah.
All right. We got some stories. I'm like, what story can we do without Matt B? I want him there for all of these.
You can just pick one.
Okay. I'm gonna go for... All right, I got some stuff on this. You want to do the Richie Torres one now? I feel bad doing it without Matt because I just found out that he's
I'll
Jewish
listen.
too.
I'll listen. Don't worry. I'll listen in. I'll listen in.
Okay. Yeah, like I had you pegged as kind of an ethnic white of some sort, but I did not realize you were Jewish, perhaps because of your eternally bubbly disposition. I don't know.
Right. It's been it's very difficult when you have a father who is Jewish and a mother who is Catholic. It's a identity crisis, to be quite honest with you. When I was younger, I would, in Catholic school, I would tell people that I was, when they would ask your nationality, I would say, I'm Italian and Jewish. And people would, then in Catholic school saying you were Jewish, would, you get labeled as the Jew, but then later on, as I got older, I was like, I still feel like I'm Jewish, but I'm not religiously Jewish. So I stopped telling people I'm Jewish because I felt like I didn't want to, steal something that isn't mine, isn't me.
You're crypto. I get it.
Right. But then I found out that I am specifically a big portion Ashkenazi Jewish. And so I'm sort of more so accepting that I am Jewish, regardless of what other people might tell me about not being a true Jew.
Binder, I have a similar, story, and I've come to define it as, well, I was raised fully Catholic, but I think we found out that through the family history, there is some Jewish history, whether hidden or not. But I'm Irish, Italian, and a little bit Jewish and North African. And what I've come to define it as is ethnically Northeast American, where you have Irish, Italian, Jewish, and other things.
You buy your gabagool at the delicatessen.
There you go.
Yeah, it's confusing, but go ahead. Let's get to the story.
So, as you folks may know, New York City DSA had a very good round of elections recently. We basically ran the board winning almost every race we endorsed in, with the exception of Sambalese Lopez in the Bronx, who was sadly defeated by one Richie Torres, right? You win some, you lose some. Now, I didn't know that much about this Richie Torres guy before today, except for the fact that he went behind the backs of the activists and organizers who were pushing for the Right to Know Act, which was a police reform act designed to decrease the power of police, increase the power of civilians, to put some controls on the police, et cetera, et cetera. He went behind the backs of these people and made a backroom deal with the NYPD that weakened the act. So I didn't like him for that reason. Now we have another reason to dislike him. So recently he got on a Zoom call with Democratic Majority for Israel, which is a Zionist group, and he had some choice words for New York City DSA.
One moment, that video's broken.
Oh no. It's the Zionists. And I should also say that this was obtained by Ryan Grimm, who is a reporter at The Intercept.
I might be able to play it if you need me to. Just let me know which one it is. Okay, so is it the top one here?
The bottom one.
Or this one? Bottom one? Okay.
Okay. Thank you. First, it's an honor to be here with Kathy. I'm looking forward to serving with you and Congressman Max Rose. I have to say, no one there's been no member of Congress who has reached out to me more proactively and been mentoring me as much as Max. So I'm just grateful to you, and I thank you for your friendship. As to your question, whether I feel outnumbered, it's not so much outnumbered. I feel drowned out. That in politics, there's no doubt in my mind there is a silent majority for Israel, but a visible vocal minority is often mistaken for majority and often has outsized influence over public discourse and public policy. And part of the problem is social media, which has the effect of amplifying the ideological extremes. In New York City, we've seen the rise of the Democratic Socialist of America, which is explicitly pro-BDS. The Democratic Socialist lefts endorsed in about 11 races and won every single one except mine. So it's proven to be effective at winning elections. And I worry about the normalization of anti-Semitism within progressive politics. I consider BDS the attempt to delegitimize Israel, to be anti-Semitic at its core, and any movement that embraces anti-Semitism is destined to rot from within. It strikes close to home for me as an openly LGBTQ person, because part of what it means to be LGBTQ is to live life with integrity and authenticity. And if the message to those who are both progressive and pro-Israel, especially people of Jewish descent, that in order for you to be part of the progressive community, you have to renounce your identity and your history and your ties to your own homeland, and you have to be in the closet, that to me is profoundly evil. That's a perversion of progressivism, and that's something that pro-Israel progressives have to fight against. And so it's incumbent upon us to create space within the progressive movement for pro-Israel voices.
Wow. Where do I begin? So he speaks further in another clip about the need to build institutions to support pro-Israel Zionist candidates, I guess. And dude, there is an institution for those who support Israel and conflate any critique of Israel with anti-Semitism. It's called the Democratic Party. This thing called AIPAC. We'll give you a bunch of money. You're gonna love it. So let's deal with some of the things he said here.
Or do you want to watch? You want to deal with that, or should we watch this other clip first?
I mean, I guess I kind of stepped on it just now by saying what they said and then saying what I think about what they said. But play it if you like.
Yeah, it's just.
It was actually Richie, I never told you this. I was actually so nervous to meet you because I felt like, oh my gosh, it was just so beautiful and almost not otherworldly, but amazing the way you speak with such honesty and conviction about Israel, U.S.-Israel relations and everything about that. It really is. I just wish that we could clone you so there were a million bitches running around talking about Israel.
Here's a question from Meshulam. How do you build a new generation of pro-Israel progressive candidates across the country, say like how AOC has with the Justice Democrats?
I mean, you need to build institutions. The institutional left is extraordinarily effective at recruiting candidates and training them and fundraising for them and building a whole infrastructure around them. The pragmatic progressive wing of the party needs to create its own infrastructure to recruit candidates, to fundraise for them, to provide them with institutional memory and expertise. What is desperately needed is infrastructure, right? If you're like a pro-BDS leftist, there's a whole industrial complex that exists to support you. But if you are pragmatic pro-Israel Democrat, you're often left to your own devices. And so there needs to be an infrastructure that supports a pragmatic alternative to the extremes.
You hear that, folks? The DSA has an industrial complex around pro-BDS progressives, while the quote-unquote pragmatic progressives, all right, the pro-Israel centrists have absolutely nowhere to go. They're politically homeless. They have no infrastructure, no support, no money from a thing called AIPAC. Like, what? So say what you want about the makeup of NYC DSA, and, you'll probably be right. We have no shortage of Jews in this organization. So what the hell is he talking about when he talks about how we're a bunch of rotten anti-Semites? Does it mean that we are, in supporting BDS, we actually hate ourselves and we are renouncing our homeland, which is, biblically declared, getting in the closet, akin to gay people in a homophobic society, and just, saying we hate ourselves? What's going on here?
Man, I mean, a simple script to run is every time it says Israel, just replace it with South Africa and imagine it's like 35 years ago. Here's a little, here's an alternative viewpoint in a few seconds.
We identify with the PLO because just like ourselves, they are fighting for the right of self-determination.
Look at that extremist.
That's right.
Right.
Like, this is really one of those times I wish Michael were here, because he would absolutely demolish every single thing that this guy said. But I'm going to do my best, and I see you guys are as well. The thing about BDS, all right, is we are recognizing Israel as a settler colonial apartheid state. And this movement has been modeled off of the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa. And it is a state that regularly commits atrocities against the Palestinian people. And, seeing as internationalism is a core tenet of our principles in NYC DSA and DSA as a whole, we're standing in solidarity with them, with this movement. And as we try to do with oppressed people everywhere who are fighting for the right to self-determination. And in this case, the goal is ending the occupation and colonization of Arab Palestinian lands, ending the siege on Gaza, which is currently an open-air prison, and giving full rights to Palestinian citizens of Israel. And importantly, a thing called the right of return, allowing Palestinian refugees to return to their homes that they were violently expelled from. And this right was outlined in the UN Resolution 194, and that has not happened yet. And P.S., my homeland is New York, so stop justifying the bad shit that Israel does in my name. And also, next time around, Sam Louise Lopez is going to run against this guy, and she's going to win. What do you guys think about all that?
Right. No, I agree. I mean, to me, the easiest way actually to refute some of this stuff when it comes to these people is, those people who are questioning, like the constituents who are questioning him about what could we do to, usually these people are actually very anti-Trump, right? He's horrible. He's terrible. Well, if you don't like Trump, then you can't support you can't support Israel. There's no state that supports Donald Trump more than Israel because of the far right-wing government of Israel. Like, we don't even need to get into, we don't need to deal with the history because these people don't care about that stuff. Deal with, for me, in my opinion, right. Deal with right here, right now. If you support current day Israel, then you support Donald Trump. It's that simple. Netanyahu supports Trump more than anyone else, even more so than Vladimir Putin. It's like I don't know what to say. If you can't criticize Israel right now, then just go out there and vote for Donald Trump, because that's what you're doing by defending what Israel does. Because there is no country, like, even if you go and just ask the people of all these countries that you think supports Donald Trump, there's like one country where the overwhelming majority of the people in this country, because they've been brainwashed by their right-wing government's propaganda over all these years, it's Israel. It's Israel. Like, you go to Russia and ask them what they think about Donald Trump, it's not even going to be as overwhelming as the positive view that people in Israel have for Donald Trump because of the right-wing government. So, again, it's just that simple. If you don't support Donald Trump, then you can't support Israel. It's I don't know what to say.
I think that's
it's like really frustrating to me. Like, these people are out there going like, Donald Trump is the worst thing ever to happen. What? You're criticizing Netanyahu? It's like, give me a break. Give me a break. Understand how the world works and how all these different, right-wing fascists work together. I mean, it's just that simple.
Yeah, well, Netanyahu came like before Trump was even president, when Obama was still president, and spoke specifically to the Republican House. Like, he's
right.
And Yair Netanyahu, that's his name, right? His son is doing like MAGA tours of the South. I think he's spoken like Tennessee or some sort of religious convention. Just bizarre stuff. Israel's totally on board the MAGA train, and I think that's a question Torres should be asked, actually.
And it's funny too, because I remember discussing this with Michael back in the day, how you never hear Democrats who support Israel talking about offering any sort of support to the Israeli left. They don't care about the leftists in Israel at all, who are actually living under this right-wing government for how many years now? Geez. I mean, if you actually care about, if you're a Jewish person or not Jewish person like Torres who cares about Israel, then you should be working, and you're a Democrat or a leftist or a liberal or whatever, you should be working to help the people in Israel who are on the left, who have to live under this far right government. It's crazy how they can't understand there's a difference between the right-wing government that's been ruling Israel and basically has become what the de facto of what Israel is today. And the people in Israel who, many of them are not to blame, because they're just like American citizens who have been fooled by Donald Trump, who are just, it's the same dynamic here. You're going after, like, I don't even, it's just baffling. I don't even.
It's progressivism for me, but not for thee.
Right.
Like, it makes no sense at all to call yourself a progressive or certainly a socialist and support the right-wing government in Israel, which, we hear a lot about their treatment of the Palestinians, which is incredibly horrendous, but also, right-wing austerity policies. And, maybe they have a few gay clubs at Tel Aviv, which everyone likes to trumpet, but that's not good enough. We need rights for everyone.
And, with respect to Torres, he definitely isn't calling himself a socialist anymore, or even an AOC-style Democrat. But I don't know if this, pragmatic, moderate Democrat, like, you're going to need to think of a better name for this, Richie, for this little institution of yours. And by the way, when these institutions start developing, anybody who doesn't have like a footprint online should start to like maybe try to infiltrate those for us, because we would be much appreciative.
Mm-hmm. Boom.
All right, we want to try the phones again? I hope this works.
Yeah.
All right, let's give it one more. 308, what's your name? Where are you calling from? 308.
Sorry about.
There we go.
Being in my shop. What's going on? It's cold.
Hold on, you guys hear the caller?
Yep.
I fixed it. Beautiful. How you doing, Kowalski?
Oh, not too bad. Just got back from Oregon. Holy shit, was that a lot of gunfire?
referencing the 200 rounds fired between the Antifa members throwing Molotov cocktails in the middle of the woods, and that Facebook post.
To be fair, it was actually conventional mortars, but I could see how somebody who isn't aware of mortars would get the confusion. But yeah.
I mean, it's, first of all, like these guys don't even get what the point. Like, Antifa wouldn't, like, all right, Antifa sets fire where? In the middle of the city, so people pay attention and look at what they're doing. Why would they go in the middle of the woods where no one's even watching them and just set random forest fires? It makes no sense. The dumbest thing imaginable.
Because America is a fascist state, Bender.
Right.
So you take the fight to it anywhere.
You know what I've seen, actually? I've seen a few of them. I didn't put it in the newsletter because it wasn't enough, I felt, to make it relevant enough. But I did see some people saying, I know it's BLM because they recently stated that they're going to burn the system down. Not understanding what that means. They literally...
They meant the ecosystem.
Burning the
right.
Well, I called in for two reasons. One was that Lincoln, Nebraska, the city council there recently passed a measure that made racism a city health crisis. So good on them. And then the other reason I wanted to call in was to challenge you guys on the way you described the new Call of Duty game, because this is a hill I have decided to die on.
Oh, I missed this. What's going on?
Well, okay, so the game that's coming out is, I believe, by Treyarch, which did the Black Ops series. And I know that, like, a lot of people don't like it because Ronald Reagan is in it, whatever. But I think a lot of people forget that if you actually follow the Black Ops series, it really, like, in Black Ops 2, the main villain was literally a guy who was driven to extremism because of what capitalism did to his family. And what the U.S. drug war did to his sister, like it ended up killing her, and he basically swore revenge to destroy the system by creating a global populist movement. So I think this is probably going to be a little more deep than a lot of people are, making it out to be. So I would say, as far as like the story on it goes, it's probably going to be a little more nuanced than a lot of people would maybe think from the onset. But then on the other side, the whole Call of Duty franchise is an evil organization that's subsisting off microtransactions. So criticize it there.
Well, I just want to say the nuance I'm looking for, Kowalski, is the nuance where you can decide to do a decapitation strike against the United States government. But I will take your point about the storylines. I haven't really played the Call of Duty series. I am not much of an online gamer. I don't like to play multiplayer.
Really?
I'm more of a solitary.
I will also say this about the Modern Warfare franchise, is that Modern Warfare 2, the main antagonist is actually U.S. general that's trying to instigate a war to bring basically U.S. nationalism back to the forefront. And in the last mission, you're killing Black Ops U.S. soldiers playing as a member of British SAS, trying to basically stop a nuclear war.
Okay.
So I would say that it's just an over-the-top bombastic shooter game with no real politics other than things go boom, please buy.
Fair enough.
I mean, it's the hill I am dying on.
Last Call of Duty game I played, like religiously, like actually like obsessed with it, was Call of Duty 2. So I'm really
yeah, Call of Duty 2 is tight.
That was one of my favorites. And I remember actually picking up Call of Duty 3 after, and they changed the gameplay up. And I was like, ugh.
I was out.
Yeah. Something I'm a big fan of sniping in these games, and they changed the sniper like mechanism up, and it wasn't as fun to snipe anymore. And that's when I tapped out. I have been playing a lot of let's finish with Kowalski, and then we'll talk more about video games.
Well, I want to talk with Kowalski about a video game. Kowalski, did you play the Far Cry series?
Yes. I played the last two, I guess. But...
So the 5 that's set in like sort of a Montana type location.
Montana.
And they made it look like it was going to be like you against sort of MAGA style, like white nationalists. And then this is my example of corporations, like, I guess, cucking out and not doing the cool game. Because instead they made it a cult that was frankly like very diverse, especially for a cult in Montana. So like they weren't like white nationalists at all. They were just like sort of like some ego cult from some guy and some family. So they could have had this. Yeah, I mean, it would have been a pretty bold choice because it was the first big game that came on after Trump won, I think, or was announced after Trump won. So I was excited for that reason. And then they get a little bit skittish. But the next one is set in like Cuba.
There's actually a mission in that game where it's called Make America or Make Hope County Great Again, where you actually help a Trump-esque like politician stop cultists from voting, and it's really dumb.
Oh my god,
yeah,
that is bad.
It's
I got to get back into games, man. All I've been playing lately is Fortnite because my son wanted the battle pass because of the Marvel characters in this season of Fortnite, and so he's 5 and he's not leveling up fast enough. So I'm at night I'm playing to level him up because I didn't know this. I know nothing about Fortnite. I'm really into it now, but I knew nothing about Fortnite other than the very basics about, like why it's big and all that. But I never knew nothing about the actual inside the game stuff. And you buy the battle pass and basically that just unlocks the stuff for you to unlock while playing. Like you don't get it right away. I did not know that. I thought I pay the money and he gets all the skins he wanted. He gets Iron Man, he gets Groot. No, I got to play the game for him and actually unlock that shit.
Now, here's a question, because I haven't played video games probably since I got rid of my Super Nintendo in college. Is there a game that lets you play on the side of the Antifa communists? Because I would start gaming again for that.
I think there's a Russian Revolution game. I don't know it off the top of my head, but people are probably going to be in my mentions about it after this. But yeah, like I've also wanted a really like a Civil War game, American Civil War game that's super like the Call of Duty franchise, that kind of realism. But I want to go ahead.
Just Cause is, I think, the closest like mainstream game to what I think Jamie is describing, because you basically are fighting fascistic states.
Yeah,
I mean, you're for the CIA, which doesn't make sense, but yeah. Although you kind of kill one of the CIA operatives on a few of them. I've played a lot of video games because there's nothing to do here in the winter.
Hell yeah, Kolsky. I love video games on the prairie is a very good pastime that I took part in as well. But also in BioShock Infinite, you can take on some like clan member looking guys. Likewise.
Oh yeah, you're just straight up going against objectivists there, which is hilarious. It's like you versus the Paul Ryans of the world.
Also, Matt, I think you just found a new side project. That sounds like a possible name for the next live stream show or podcast.
That's kind of what
games on the prairie.
Yeah, I mean, I don't live on the prairie anymore, but yeah, other than that,
you're a prairie boy at heart.
But the prairie still lives in you.
Yes, exactly.
Also, kudos to you, Admiral Jamie. We saw your work down on the lake in Texas. See ya.
Thank you. Let's keep that one just between us and all the people watching, but I'll take it.
So funny. All right. All right, let's go to the calls again now that they're working. 951, what's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Matt. My name's Chris. I'm calling from California.
Hey, Chris. How you doing? I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous having ever called into a show before.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Do you living under red skies still where you are, or did you not experience that, or how's that?
Man, I live right next to that gender reveal fire.
Ooh.
And prior to that, there was this. Yeah, prior to this, there was that an apple fire that was caused by a spark arrestor on one of these big trucks, I guess, and it caused a fire prior to that. So.
Right. Antifa was driving that truck. It was an Antifa truck. They were delivering members of Antifa. It was an Antifa bus delivering.
This area is fully conservative of old, people, and it just makes me sad actually because there's like no one really to talk to, and I guess I have to call into a show to talk to people that have like-minded, politics. So
don't worry. Anyway, we're here for you, buddy. What do you want to talk about? We're here. Let's do it.
I appreciate it. Well, first I want to say how important the majority report is being, a program for like unifying people and informing people and entertaining us, people who care about other people and politics. And I just want to say thank you for doing that for us.
Oh, well, I would argue there's some more important shows out there, like, Literary Hangover, Intifada, Doomed. But I get what you're saying. Go ahead.
Yeah, no one takes phone calls, though.
Right.
What's up with that?
Right. Well, I'll try. I do sometimes, but let's continue. Go ahead.
We are not a live show, but we have on occasion had our patrons call in during special times.
Oh.
It's a pain in the ass to figure it out. but we do it.
Like I can tell the technical problems you guys have. I feel you though. So I called because I wanted to talk to you about like this conversation I've been having with my coworkers, and it seems to be working like really to have people understand like the larger problems of like that larger economic picture. And so what I've been referring to is I start off by just basically saying like referring to like the MIT's like living wage calculator, and basically like if you're like if you're living in America, you have to pay bills, and these bills that you have to be thinking about are like your rent and your housing and your food and your transportation. And I tell the guys, I'm like, hey, look, the reason things are hard isn't because the reason that people are having difficulty paying the bills isn't because you're not working hard enough. It's because bad policies. There's these bad policies that are crushing us. It's like these I tell them like the housing in Orange County is where I work, and I have guys getting kicked out of areas because like our raises are pretty constant. Like none, no raise, but the housing, the cost of rent keeps on going up and up. And I tell the guys what needs to really happen is that we shouldn't really be focusing on, like the raises that we get. We should just be focused on lowering the costs. And I think that's like the best way to, think about new policies. I'm sorry, did you want to interject? I see.
No, I think that's a good point. I mean, I would say both, but yeah, usually what happens, right, is that, they give you, you get a little something but everything else raises a lot more. The cost of living of everything else raises a lot more, and it never really evens out. It actually probably ends up means you're making even less than you made before because, but imagine how you'd be without that raise to begin with. But yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I normally get angry when I have these conversations with guys because it's like pisses me off, man. Like you'll never make. It's always a struggle. And I said, what happens like when you can't pay your bills? What happens is that you get stressed out, man. Like it's on your mind and your body. Like when you can't pay your bills, when you can't hit all these marks, when you don't make enough, you have to live with other family members. Like just this endless it's like this system of suppression. It's like
that's the thing though. That's why they are who they are. That's why they have the political ideology they have. It's because they haven't experienced that. Like you can't possibly think that everything is solved by just pulling yourself up by your bootstraps if you've ever experienced an actual hardship. Like if you've ever been a working person working 60, 70, 80 hours, you don't even need to work that much, working even just 40 hours a week, working as hard as you can just to survive, but it's still not making enough. And no matter what you do, it never evens out. You're never able to pull yourself out of the rut. If you've never done that, then you can't possibly understand that it's not that easy. You just think it is. Right. I've never experienced hardship, and I work, even though I'm making who knows how much they make to have this idea that they're safe forever. But yeah, it shows, but that really is what is the conservative, and I'm including libertarians in here too. Anyone right of center, that really explains their entire mindset though. And you see it all the time from even the most centrist person to far right. Until it happens to them, they don't care. They need to have that experience for it to even occur to them that it's something that goes on. It's a sad way to live, honestly.
I think there's this two levels of these two conversations. And it's one reason I think like Bernie was effective on this one level, because everything he did was actually reducing lowering people's cost of living, people that are struggling to get over that level of like, when you have to worry about all your bills being paid, that's who he was talking to. and he was successful, but he wasn't successful to these people that are above that. That's a different conversation. But I tell the guys at work, I said, any politician who doesn't, at the end of the day, isn't going to lower your cost of living is bullshit. Like, I don't want to, you can look at all, like, what has Trump done? He hasn't lowered our costs. In fact, there's so many things that are happening right now at the Fed. Like, they're going to increase, the things that we, our goods and services. It's not helping us out, and that's kind of like one thing I think is important.
Nothing is more clear to give an example of what you're saying. Nothing is more clear than their barometer for success, and that is how many new jobs there are. Doesn't matter what kind of job, doesn't matter how much the job pays, doesn't matter if it's a full-time job or not. Whatever it is, as long as there's a new job that just gets added into the tally of new jobs equals success. So it doesn't matter if the job is paying someone below living wage. It doesn't matter if a person working 40, 50, 60 hours at this job can't even pay all their bills, living on a most the smallest possible cost of living that they can. It doesn't matter. They got the job. It's a success story. So yeah, in a lot of ways, because what you're saying is it makes tons of sense. And to continue on what you said about Bernie, definitely that's part of why. Also, I think unfortunately there is a large group of people who have been disillusioned by politics, who are in that lower end of the scale, from middle class and lower class and people in poverty and below. They're just so disillusioned that they just don't go out and vote, or they just literally just don't have the time to even pay attention enough to do so, because they're just working and taking care of their family. And it just, the thought of being able to tick a box and elect someone who can possibly help them sounds so over the top and fake. That doesn't sound believable. So, I think that's part of it.
And most of the time it is fake, to be fair.
Yes, it is. Yeah. And unfortunately, Bernie's path to victory to him was getting those people out to vote. And while we did see that young people did come out in larger numbers, they didn't come out in large enough numbers, and people on the 45 plus who fit that description didn't come out for him either. So, it is certainly the way to victory, but the nut to crack is how do you get them out? Right. And Bernie couldn't crack that nut.
Mm-hmm. That story's there, though. That story of being oppressed, being, how making life being difficult. It's there for us to tell. We have that story to tell. It's obvious. It's always in our face. That's why we need more storytellers, and that's and programs like your own. To be quite frank, like all of your programs are important in this narrative, and there needs to be more, because quite frankly, the other side's being funded by millionaires and billionaires who don't want this conversation to be had. And it's pretty obvious that the bullshit of like, hey, lower my cost, man. Why am I paying so much? Why can't it cost me more, to do public transportation to just drive my truck to work, which is like 70 miles one way. You know what I mean? Like, that's insane, right? It's right. And
well, there definitely is a real problem. And that's the left is not, and a lot of this stuff, especially in the age of the coronavirus, where people say online is not real life. Okay, maybe if you want to believe that pre-2020, okay, but I disagree even on that. But certainly now online is real life, because it is literally how a large portion of people are just living, period. There is no human interaction for some people. That's why you're seeing QAnon, like literally like not to use this, not to call it this during this time, but not to, but it's like spreading like wildfire. Seriously, if you look at QAnon pre-March and where it is today, it is insanity. And that's because people were online and had nothing better to do than to fall down these traps and they were brainwashed. And the left is not working at the same level the right is online. They're just not. There's way more people. You look on Twitter, but they're not working together. You look at the right-wing networks that work together on Facebook and on YouTube to help promote each other's shit and spread all this stuff. It's been uncovered actually. What's his face? Judd Lugham, who used to work, I think, for Think Progress. He has a newsletter. And I think that's his name. I'm sorry if I massacred your name, buddy. But he has a piece about how, Ben Shapiro's network basically pays these other large right-wing networks to spread his stuff. And that's why his stuff gets passed around. I mean, yeah, there's a money transaction, but at least they're open to even doing it. I mean, I don't know any big Facebook networks on the left that are even willing to share stuff that isn't their own. I mean, it's unfortunate, but I mean, Occupy Democrats has a huge, and you could criticize them for being normie Dems or whatever, but they are the biggest thing that anything left of center has on Facebook. And I don't know of them reaching out to any smaller networks who put out good content saying, hey, let us help you boost your stuff. I mean, they should, even if they ask for a small amount of money or whatever, so they get something out of it. But they don't even, as far as I know, they don't even like offer it. I wish they did. And not to harp on them. I mean, there's other similar networks. They just use them as an example because they're the biggest.
Right. Before I go, I just wanted to say that, I'm sorry for being so nervous. It's hard for me to get my thoughts together because it's a little disconcerting. But I just wanted to say that I think that one topic that isn't talked about in the left and the liberal is ethics. I'm actually, schooled in as a philosopher with an emphasis in ethics, and I literally is a void of talking about ethics. And I think the key points what ethics do is they set priorities in kind of a universal way, and also they set thresholds, what type of things that we should be involved with. And I think that's a story, a narrative that's missing on the left and the right. And I think the conservatives have it. They have it like an ethic, like a market-based ethics, where the market comes before people. But it's a system of ethics I think is missing on the left and the right that we need to talk about. I'm too nervous to talk about right now, but I just wanted to mention that before I was
don't be nervous next time you call, because you were a great caller and you sparked some great conversation here with me and Jamie, and it was a pleasure having you. So take care, stay safe.
Thank you.
And don't go to any gender reveal parties.
No. I'm gonna bring my fire extinguisher wherever I go now.
Oh yeah.
Take care.
Take care.
I would only add, now that the call is over, lol, I think the left has a pretty strong system of ethics, and I don't really trust anybody who says, oh, I am a Marxist and a communist, because it is pure science and logic and ethics have nothing to do with it. No, your personal ethics and the ethics of caring about other people is such a central part of socialist thought, going all the way back to Marx. Yes, he is describing this stuff in a very social sciencey way, but he's also pissed off about it. And you can tell throughout all of his writing whose side he's on and how much he hates the capitalists. But certainly moral indignation is always a good weapon in our arsenal. And then forcing the, shall we say, the centrists, the neoliberals, whoever who claim that they believe in progress and that they believe in human rights to actually, no, please explain right now why you don't support Medicare for all if you support, everyone having healthcare. And that is a good tool. Also, I think we're speaking to the need for a diversity of tactics on the left and the need to concern ourselves with the cultural sphere, because I feel like a lot of leftists are willing to abandon it and say, oh, that doesn't matter, culture, it's part of the superstructure, it's bubbling up from whatever's happening economically in the base, therefore trying to change culture is like the tail wagging the dog. Now, that's true to some degree. However, I think we can all think of people, maybe ourselves, who've been radicalized by listening to leftist punk rock, for example. You never know which door it's going to come in through. And I think we also need to do more than run electoral campaigns, right? Because for some people, it will click that way. And for other people, it won't. So in addition to that, we need to help people fight their bosses, fight their landlords, fight the police, and wherever people might have a real personal stake in the ideas of the left. And especially right now, it seems like a lot of it is coming in through the door of racial justice as well. So I liked what you said about the internet, Matt, and I think the left needs to expand on that to every sphere of life, because the right has certainly done a good job.
Right. I mean, look how that's I can't believe I'm going to say something nice about him, but look how Sam always gives everyone possible that he can a boost. They has him on the show. He, lets former producers come on and co-host. But it's true though. But then when you look at these other areas where there's, room for growth on the left, especially on Facebook. I mean, there's probably no bigger, platform that shows just how these things translate into real life. And that's because, there's so many older people on Facebook, and those older people tend to vote in bigger numbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't believe that even the Democrats, I mean, I have these stats actually. I don't have time to pull them up, but I was looking the other day at CrowdTangle, which is Facebook's platform that basically shows the biggest stories on and it's only open for journalists and researchers usually, but they put this data out more publicly for the election, and it shows which presidential candidates are getting the most engagement on Facebook. And Donald Trump gets something like 85% of the Facebook engagement out of all the presidential candidates every single day. And when you look at why that is, because Donald Trump is posting Facebook content 2 to 3 times an hour, whereas Joe Biden's Facebook page is posting content 2 to 3 times every 6 hours or something like that. They're just giving it away to this major platform, to the right wing, to just own. And it makes no sense. Why are you you have a whole campaign that you can, and again, this is talking about an electoral sense, but it translates to the left too, because in many ways, I mean, think about all the big Facebook pages you see get shared: Ben Shapiro, Fox News, Dan Bongino, Daily Wire, Daily Caller. Where's the left's leading pages? Where are these networks and news outlets being shared? They're not being shared in those numbers. Mm-hmm. And that's because other left-leaning outlets aren't helping them out by giving each other a boost. All right, let's go to another phone call because we have a lot. And I like the phone calls. Don't you like the phone calls, Jamie?
I do. I like talking to the people.
All right. Yeah. This show is people powered. 818. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's hi Matt and Jamie and Brendan. This is Dave from Jamaica. How are you guys doing?
Hey Dave, great to hear from you. What's up?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm calling with a disagreement per se, but it's more, at least from my experience, when I try to expose people to leftist ideas in the workplace, or little ways I can. People are a little more complicated, not disagreeing with what you and the previous caller were saying. Because, I would say my father's a center-right lib type, and he grew up in abject poverty, and then he managed to work his way up to upper middle class. But they buy into the same narratives, and I'm not, semi-bootstrapped stuff, not all the way, but I find it very difficult because when I try to do my spiel, I don't hit them over the head with it. I'm kind of very subtle. But even when you're very subtle, there is a rejection of it, because I think a lot of people really believe that they are kind of that embarrassed millionaire waiting for their break, so to speak. At least that's my interpretation. Right. Where you think I'm wrong in that type of thinking?
No, I think they've
actually experienced the poverty, but they just I don't know.
Right. It's a little bit of both, maybe. If you haven't experienced it, then you there's a certain type of mindset that if you haven't experienced it, then you think it's not that difficult to get out of it. Or if you've experienced a level of it, but you have gotten out of it yourself based on privileges and advantages that you had that other people didn't have, then you also don't understand it. Like, for example, say you did experience hard times, and instead of sleeping on a park bench or being homeless and having to, live on the streets or go to a shelter, you had a parent's basement to stay in. That gives you a leg up too that a lot of people don't have. And if you don't experience that, then if you're behind on rent and you're struggling and you cut things out, like you have to get rid of all your extracurricular stuff, can't do fun stuff. You have to, drop whatever Netflix you pay for or whatever. But, you got your parents there to give you a couple $100 so you could make your rent. You also probably think that you've come out of these hard times without any help, without realizing that, no, you did. You had a lot of help, actually. I mean, it's different levels of help, and it's, but you're not doing it solely on your own. And to be frank, no one should. It's good you have support and backbone and someone there to help you. You also have to realize, though, that not everyone has that. And it's not as easy for those people to get out of that situation.
It's kind of it's a very weird situation. Like, I think, as Jamie was saying, where people have gotten used to the idea that they're in it on their own. So, like, it's I don't know how to describe it, because I use my father as a good example, because he grew up, when I mean abject poverty, I'm talking like one of 13 kids, one pair of clothes, that type of shit. So it's a very hard thing to break through. I don't know if it's called like survivor bias or something like that, but
I think it's called ideology.
I'm still
honestly,
working on it.
I think
one thing I think
this is the influence of ideology, and your ideology is determined by your life experiences, by the stories that you are told about yourself and about the way the world works. And it's like I think people misunderstand me sometimes, like when I talk about the influence of ideology, like, oh, you think people are stupid? No, everybody has ideology, and everybody has ideology that's influenced by both consciously and unconsciously. That's why the capitalist system has built up such a strong and complex and deep ideological structure, particularly to reinforce these beliefs in people. So it is very difficult to counteract the influence of bourgeois ideology, going back to the Horatio Alger stories or whatever.
And look how it evolves too for like current day. Like, what's the big push of that today? You see it a lot online, especially the hustle porn stuff, all about rising and grinding. You're judged you're judged by how hard you work, as if that has any real reflection on how much you make. I mean, we know that billionaires aren't the hardest workers. If you actually got paid based on how hard you work, then the immigrants picking the fruits and vegetables, they'd be the ones who would be walking away with millions of dollars, because they're objectively working harder than a lot of other people, the labor workers. But that's sort of the thing too, and that whole culture of the hustling, it really focuses on you being the one individual with the power to do it all, to change it all. It's that like entrepreneurial mindset. Never mind that, of course, even people who run their own business and do everything on their own, they're certainly getting help from something, whether they realize it or not. Say they run a business and need to ship items. People are paying to maintain those roads that the United States Postal Service needs to drive on to get the items you ship out there to your customers to their locations. Like, there's really nothing you're doing on your own when it comes to this stuff, but they don't think of those things because it's not in front of them every day. They just see themselves doing this work, and they say, this whole like sort of pride comes over them, I guess, where you're like, oh, wow, look what I'm doing.
Well, I guess maybe this is an unfair question for me to ask, because I'm trying to, as I said, I when I do my thing, I'm not beating them over the head with marks or stuff like that. I'm just trying to apply, subtle things like that. But I think the issue I'm having is breaking through that ideology, because I can see in scenarios, and I've seen it before, where hardship does come for them, and then they view the hardship as a personal feeling or something of that nature. So in other words, like when I'm trying to say maybe certain things should not be in the private hands, right?
Right.
It's so hard to break that thinking, even though they've personally experienced pretty horrible stuff. Right. So I'm wondering if y'all have any advice, because I'm struggling down here trying
let's put it this way,
kind of break through.
let's put it this way. Let's take that example. Let's just say that their business or their work or whatever, their career did change for the worse because of something they personally did. Let's say they made a bad business move, made an investment in something that didn't pan out, a second location of a food operation or whatever, and it didn't work out, and that crashed their business. Do we want to live in a world where you can't do those, if you do those things and fail, that you have to lose everything and literally just your life could be over? It just doesn't make any sense. Why don't we want to have an infrastructure where people can try to go out and take these risks? But if they fail, we don't say, oh, you're on your own on the streets with you. No, what if we say these basic necessities everyone should have, so more people could take these risks, or the people who are already taking risks can take bigger ones. Not even for the success for yourself portion of it. Just imagine where we would be technologically, with medicine, if people were able to take risks. Can't afford to be a doctor, can't afford to
the choir.
Right, can't afford to do this stuff.
Preaching to the choir, but
right,
I think that even when you put it like that, it's almost like a mental block. I made the mistake, so I don't know. It's very frustrating. I know I'm usually more positive with my calls, but
maybe there's just some people that
that's all right. We're living in some seriously troubled times. I mean, sometimes I would try to personalize it. Maybe what if it was your mother who was old and living in poverty? Would you want her to get some help then? Because most people do care about the members of their own family. And I think the idea is to expand that sense of care and consideration to everybody else in society. So maybe that'll work, maybe it won't, but I like the idea of, take that nugget of human empathy that they do have for the people who they care about the most and try to extend that to someone else's grandmother,
Or worse comes to worse, if the person you're talking about is really as hard-headed as you're making it out to be, you need to sabotage their business and career and just make them experience
no,
the absolute worst possible.
They have their what you call it now. They have their moments of humanity, but Gramsci was right. Hegemony is a bitch, right?
Is.
Thanks for the call, though. Really appreciate it. This was a great. Oh wait, I'm sorry. I thought you stopped. Take care.
Keep fighting.
No.
Fight.
The lag on here sometimes is, Jimmy. I realized we did things in reverse today. We got right into the fun stories and the calls and didn't really hit any of the important news stuff. And we only got another 15, 20 minutes. So I think we should hit some of these stories. Now, did Sam talk about, because I can't tell when this broke yesterday, did Sam talk about Trump's and Bob Woodward?
We touched on it.
You did touch on it, yeah.
Okay, so there's some other things that came out, though, about this. Let me pull this up. This was, of course, as I go to pull it up, I closed the tab. Did you guys hit up that story about the Department of Homeland Security telling the whistleblower there?
I headlined
it.
Yeah, but we don't really have sound for that. We should do.
We got some clips.
Yeah, let's do the clips. Let's do one.
I didn't get the sound sheet. Brendan never sent it to me, so that's all you guys. Play whatever you got.
I'll forward it. Yeah.
Check your email.
No, you sent it to me and Jamie.
In fact, I even said in our little private IMs, I said, Brendan, you didn't send me the sound sheet. Just never got sent though.
But yeah, let's do one. Okay. All right. Hold on one second. Okay. I'll set it up. So yeah, Donald Trump was asked about this Bob Woodward report, and then everyone's mad that Woodward didn't disclose. I think
they should be.
They should be, but I think anybody who's listened to this show and knows Sam's history with Bob Woodward understands that not really out of character for Woodward. He's a businessman. But that aside, Trump has now asked for it. It's dropped down in the middle of a primary. Frankly, that's also a use for it, as far as I'm concerned. It's not an ethical use for it, but I think we should definitely make hay out of it now, because it is true that Trump said, yeah, I'm trying to downplay it a little bit because I don't want people to get panicked. And so now Trump said, is kind of copying to this a little bit. And he has, I guess he's sort of elaborated in a new idea of executive power. And it's called the Trump Cheerleader doctrine. And we'll play this now, yeah.
Question? Having spoken to these candidates, can you address the concerns from the Woodward book in regards to whether did you mislead the public by saying that you downplayed the coronavirus and that you repeatedly did that in order to reduce panic? Did you mislead the public?
Well, I think if you said in order to reduce panic, perhaps that's so. The fact is I'm a cheerleader for this country. I love our country. And I don't want people to be frightened. I don't want to create panic, as you say. And certainly I'm not going to drive this country or the world into a frenzy. We want to show confidence. We want to show strength. We want to show strength as a nation. And that's what I've done. And we've done very well. We've done well from any standard. You look at our numbers compared to other countries, other parts of the world. It's been an amazing job that we've done, I think.
Yeah.
On the coronavirus, America has gotten an F for fantastic.
Yeah. Once you put aside the deaths, as Ross Douthat says, once you put aside just the raw number of deaths, it's not so bad. Sam said yesterday, though, there's one panic that Trump is truthfully talking about that he doesn't want to cause, and that is a financial panic. Mm-hmm. All other kinds of panic he thrives off of, obviously, right? Like what was the
racial panic?
Yeah, exactly. Mainly
gender
racial
panic.
Yeah, he opened up his campaign with saying Mexican rapists are crossing over our borders, seeping into our very fabric of society. I mean, come on, like this guy lives off of this stuff. Like it's his entire message. That's how he got elected.
But I mean,
it's all about panic.
No, now he's just doing the power of positive thinking. It's like The Secret, you know? You wish hard enough and the bad thing goes away. You manifest it, people.
Of all the places to place yourself in a football metaphor, though, for Donald Trump, as the cheerleader and not, like, I don't know, maybe the coach or at least the quarterback. I don't know. Like, Joe could come out in a football helmet, I think. But
right, yeah. Yeah, it's, yeah.
That might make people think about CTE, but
and going to going to your point earlier about Bob Woodward, you know, I saw a lot of people harping on the idea that, you know, why wouldn't he come out and say this? And then I also saw people say, oh, come on, it's not like we didn't know that Trump is this person, of course. And this is how I think. Like, this obviously isn't telling us anything new about Trump. Like, we know that he is a liar, and we know that, you know, even if this information came out, he would just deny it anyway. He lies about things he says days before. Mm-hmm. But the point, though, in calling Bob Woodward out for doing this is because not to criticize people's reactions to how things with Trump could be different, but how just to criticize Bob Woodward for doing that, like for holding this stuff. Like, it's just ridiculous that you would call yourself a journalist and hold this sort of thing. Whether or not it changes anything, it isn't the point. Your job as a journalist is to get this news out to people, whether it does whatever you intended to do or not. I mean,
I mean, look, I think the truth is, like, people's approval of both Woodward and Trump should go down after this. And as long as that happens, then it's all good. Another clip I wanted to get to, Joe Scarborough and Willie Geist were talking about why Bernie Sanders' socialism, well, here it says, doesn't play well among a lot of Latinos. And so let's just watch this.
Hi, nothing against Bernie Sanders, but Sanders' brand of socialist policies does not play well among a lot of Latinos. Well, at least in the general election. I know he did well in the Democratic race, but not in general elections, especially in Florida.
There's a reason the Trump campaign continues to push this idea that Joe Biden is merely a vessel for what he calls the radical left, Bernie Sanders, AOC, et cetera, and you can see it's getting some traction in the Hispanic community, even if others roll their eyes and say, wait a minute, look at Joe Biden's career over 50 years. He's been a centrist and has been criticized.
And not running on Bernie's policies.
Do they pay attention? I mean, there was a recent poll that I saw from just the end of July where they were still, I forgot who was the pollster, but they were still polling who you prefer, Biden or Bernie. And Biden won with white people and with black people, yet Bernie was still winning with Latinos. He still was a number of percentage points over Biden when it comes to who you prefer. And this is well after the primaries are over, end of July. I mean,
well, a lot of Latinos in Nevada seem to prefer Bernie.
And
right. I mean, if you were
places where they never got a chance to vote as well.
Right. Yeah, of course.
Listen, he does mention Florida. And yes, if you are specifically, only, solely, not also in Florida. No, if you are only specifically talking about, not even all Latinos in Florida, only talking about Cubans in Florida, then yes, they probably don't like Bernie Sanders' policies very much.
Yeah.
But literally everyone else, no, it doesn't work. Sorry, you got wrong talking points, buddy.
This is where maybe class supersedes race in terms of how you might talk about voters, I would say.
Yeah, I was going to say, so like, first of all, Latinos are not a monolith, obviously, right. And Cuban Americans in Florida are going to vote differently from Mexican Americans in Nevada. And a lot of that does have to do with class. Like you said, a substantial portion of Latino voters are Republicans. So it makes sense that they would vote for the Republican, whether he's running against Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. However, if you look at the polls, the things that I guess they use the term Hispanic in these polls, the things Hispanic voters care about are pretty much the things that all voters care about, namely jobs, healthcare, the economy. Immigration is on there, but it's not number one. It's not as high as you would think. So for the Latinos who are Democrats, it seems to me that having something to offer in those areas would be the best way to turn them out and get them to vote in November, right? Although this kind of horse race coverage tends to place a lot of attention on swing voters, we know that elections are mostly about turnout, and you got to give people something to turn out for, right? And like the study said that Sam cited yesterday, the two primary motivating factors in the 2018 midterms in terms of turnout among Democrats were hatred of Trump and concern over healthcare, right? So given those facts, maybe it would be good to have a candidate who activates both of those things rather than only one. But what do I know?
I mean, as also another note, like white supremacy, a lot of people seem to not understand that doesn't stop at the Rio Grande. Like I was watching this reality show on Netflix, Hecho in Mexico, and it was all like these sort of like very wealthy Mexican like socialites, and it's basically just for the most part white looking people that speak Spanish. Like right. That's the main distinction there.
Yeah.
And so of course like it shouldn't be a surprise that a certain number of Latinos are vote Republican, and there's not like a big like sort of ethnic contradiction in their minds.
Yeah. I mean, whiteness is a historically malleable category. And, you know, we could talk all day about the racial dynamics within the Latin diaspora, but there's certainly a stratum of Spanish speaking people who identify more closely with whiteness than with non-whiteness. So, you know, when Trump gets up there and calls Mexicans rapists, guess what? They don't really care.
Yeah.
My relatives are Spanish conquistadors. Here's why I'm not voting for Biden.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a Joanna Hausman.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Venezuela.
So let's get to. I didn't read any IMs, so quick. We'll do some IMs because I don't want to leave all these IMs hanging. And then I guess that's the show, right, guys?
Yeah, I think so.
Chris Kringle, want to give Mr. Binder a shout out for the excellent work on misinfo.com. Thank you, comrade. Oh, well, thank you. Also, Chris says, can we all just spam the crap out of that sheriff? Oh, the one who has a podcast? We should call into his show.
Yeah.
Or email him.
Right. Yeah. He's very responsive to emails. Bear at Home too says, so glad old Matt is back. I really like the conspiracy breakdowns you do. Hope we get more of you on the show more days of the week. I swear to you, I'm not only reading these IMs. These are literally the first IMs that came in. I'm not.
If you say so.
Binder's dad, which I'm assuming is my dad, Matt B. Everyone thinks you're a cuck for loving Nancy Pelosi so much, but I think it's wicked feminist and Nancy is boss. Love you. Oh, I thank you, Pops. Kralzor says, how worried are you if Biden wins that 2022 will look like 2010 as Republicans capitalize better than leftists on Biden's inevitable failures and Biden eagerly compromises with a new Republican majority?
One difference is that the DSA is, actually endorsing winning candidates, and they weren't in 2010. So I don't know. I think that's a better state of affairs than we're in right now. So let's cross that bridge when we come to it.
Yeah, fair enough. I do worry if the Democrats gain control of the government and become the party of austerity. I mean, they have been the party of austerity, right? But the ruling party in charge of administering austerity, we're going to see a lot of people abandoning them 4 years from now. But that happens pretty much every 4 years because both parties are parties of austerity. I've said this before, but there is really no non-accelerationist option. They're both accelerationist, one probably more so than the other. But yeah, the left has its work cut out for it, no matter who wins this election.
Mm-hmm. Right. Devoid Reality says, please mention the AM Quickie point that 6 of the biggest firefighting helicopters are in Afghanistan. Excuse me. I didn't know.
Unable to help firefighting here.
Jeez. Paige from Seattle says, went to a Labor Day march in Seattle down to the police union headquarters. The minute we got there, we start to hear country music blaring out of the building's external speakers, and what seemed like the whole force coming out to crack heads to the soundtrack. They're getting bolder. Ooh.
Jeez.
Arconics about that caller that with the graduate students. As a side note, a good amount of the regents and trustees for the University of Michigan are landlords here in Ann Arbor looking to continue building luxury apartments and other unaffordable student housing in downtown A2. Gans says, Lek, play Fall Guys. I want to play. No, I'm not Matt Lek, but I want to play Fall Guys. But it's only available for PlayStation 4 and PC, and I don't have either of those things. And I'm not installing a virtual system on my Mac. It doesn't run as nicely as you would think.
No.
Chad says, Jamie, Means TV made a game called Tonight We Riot. Run PMC says Tonight We Riot is supposed to be a fun Antifa game. I think it's on Steam and Switch. I'll have to check that out.
I will. We're
also being recommended by Simple Socialist and a few others. Disco Elysium. Isn't that the one with the Chapo guys did some voiceover work for it?
Yep.
Yeah, that sounds. Apparently Tonight We Riot is a new game where you are literally Antifa and kill libertarians. What?
What? That sounds relevant.
Sounds like my type of game. Yeah. And Simple Socialist says, Disco Elysium is made by Eastern European socialists, and it's a fantastic cerebral game that explores many left-wing ideas. And yes, the guys from Chapo voiced it. All right, cool. We'll have to check that out. Dab says, I think Sam should take some lessons off of Matt on running the phone lines. It seems like Matt doesn't have as much trouble. I think we could work something out. Yeah, for a small fee, I can easily arrange that. And the final, do I want to make this the final? Well, Tim from Chicago says, tell an embarrassing Sam story. We'll have to save that for another day, Tim. Also, love you all, Tim says. And the final point he makes is, do you think Biden will make it through all 40 years alive? I mean,
Trump's made it.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
these people live a long time.
Yeah. They have access to the best medical care. I think he's going to be alive. Now, what kind of condition will his brain be in? That remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, and Josh from Chicago makes a good point about our conversation about Israel. So let's leave with this because I think this is a better end. Most of the Zionist groups are anti-Semitic. Christian Zionists are the most anti-Semitic people around. The next time Torres does an event with them, we should tie him to anti-Semitism. Right. That is a great point. Really great point. And Congressional Baseball Fan says, how can we talk about video games and Marxism without mentioning Tetris? Right.
I'll look into that one.
All right, folks, that is the show. Again, I will be live tonight with talking about the last progressive primary battle at youtube.com/MattBinder. It looks like I'm just a few subs away from 5,000 subscribers. If everyone listening to this show right now go subscribe to youtube.com/MattBinder. That'd push me over the edge. And I'd be on my way to truly competing with the Sam Cedars and David Pacmans of the world.
All right, folks.
All right. Yeah.
We will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got